Hi, I'm Mary Ann Tashko, and welcome to Living History, where we interview some of Conejo Valley's most prominent citizens. And it's my privilege to be interviewing today Mr. Raymond Clayton, who was one of the first city attorneys for the city of Thousand Oaks. You said almost the first.
Almost the first. E. Claybaugh had been a contract city attorney before I came here in 1969. And I was city attorney here for a little over 4 years until 1973.
And when did you come to the Conejo Valley? Or did
1969.
You came here. Where did
I had been assistant city attorney in Bakersfield, California. And before that, I had been a deputy district attorney in Madera County. So I kept moving south.
What were the differences between Bakersfield and Thousand Oaks?
Immense.
What was Thousand Oaks like in 1969?
We were about 28,000 people, I think. I recently was looking at some material about the history of Thousand Oaks, and it could have been a few more people than that, but I think it was about 28,000 people. And there was what is now the Jan's Mall. It was a predecessor mall, much smaller and much different from the present Jan's Mall. And there was a small mall across the street that had been developed by the Cagney family. And that was pretty well our shopping areas in Thousand Oaks. Some businesses along Thousand Oaks Boulevard, not many, but a few.
Did you come here with your family?
No, I was single when I came here. I married later, but I was single when I first came here.
Well, what was happening in Thousand Oaks during your tenure here?
It was really in its infancy, maybe even its adolescent stage. It was growing up. There were a lot of things that were pending. There was a committee of 100 that was meeting to help formulate a general plan. And they would meet many times on Saturdays because many of the members of the committee worked out of town and could only come in on a Saturday or something like that. So they were meeting on Saturdays and things like that and developing a document that became a general plan. At that time, the state had told us that general plans were a perspective of what we might want to do as a community, but were not less necessarily legally binding on us. Later that changed, and it changed by action of the courts more and partly by action of the legislature. And general plans became very binding and very controlling on what a city council could and could not do. But at the time our general plan was adopted, there was the belief among public lawyers in the state that general plans were more a guide than they were something that was rigid and had to be adhered to.
What was your most memorable experience during those years?
Well, I don't know. There were quite a few of them, as a matter of fact. I suppose one of them was Jungle Land, which was in the process of winding up and had gone into bankruptcy, and in which a city zoning enforcement officer had given them citations for a number of violations. There were rats in there. This is the site where we are now. There were rats in there. There were lots of problems that were violations of various provisions in the municipal code. And the zoning officer had gone out to give them a set of citations, which he delivered, and which the bankruptcy attorney immediately contacted the United States Marshal and sent the United States Marshal out with a set of orders prepared by the United States Attorney telling Thousand Oaks to keep its hands and business out of Jungle Land. And the U.S. Marshal came out to Lake Malibu, where I was living at the time. I had borrowed a friend's house when I first moved here, and I was living at Lake Malibu. And there was a gate and a guard, and they wouldn't let the U.S. Marshal through. But I did make contact with him, and I talked to him the next day, and he delivered the the documents from the U.S. Attorney that told us to leave the thing alone until they could get it straightened out. And they were cooperative in doing the things that we wanted, but it was a slower process.
How long did Jungle Land stay open after that?
It really wasn't open at the time. It was not for the public. It was open in terms of keeping animals for the motion picture industry, but it really wasn't, as best I recall, I don't think it was open to the public at that time.
I do remember going there as a little girl, and when it was open.
I think most people do. But
Yeah.
anyway, that was one of the more exciting moments, was when I found out that the U.S. Marshal was after me.
That is pretty exciting. If you had the power to do so, what would you change about Thousand Oaks?
I think that it has evolved rather well, and I think it's really a credit to the city councils and the administrative staffs over the years that it has evolved well. If you compare it to the other sister cities in the county and you see what this is like, the kind of environment that was created here, I think, considering where we started from and where we are now, I think we've done rather well. I'm not sure I would change very much.
Good.
I think this city has been extraordinarily fortunate in having some very good city councils, and I think some very conscientious council people.
What people do you think made some of the biggest impacts on this city? Some names come to
Well,
mind.
I think it's kind of a continuing process, and I look at each council has had to deal with a new set of problems, and there has been an interesting evolution in municipal philosophy. When I first came here in 1969, I had been out of law school for about 9 years, and I had the impression or the feeling that a owner of real property, an owner of private real property, was a very important person, and was their rights to control their real property were almost sacrosanct. That concept has probably existed generally in the community. I remember when I first came here, the city manager, Glenn Kendall, had made a statement to the press that for Thousand Oaks to keep its concept of not imposing a property tax, it would have to continue to grow and develop. And that meant development of housing and commercial and industrial structures and operations. That concept, which in 1969 rather reflected probably the general approach or consensus of the city council, has gradually evolved till we get to the point today where you see a evolution of thought that recognizes that we've run out of resources, we've run out of electricity, we've run out of water, we have problems with traffic congestion, and we have problems with air pollution, and we have problems with pollution of water, to the point where there's a concept that was very early in the development of Thousand Oaks, that is a concept of controlled growth, became a concept of a control that recognized that there were limitations on what government could provide and what natural resources could provide. So I've seen that process, and it's interesting. It certainly converted me from my thinking when I was city attorney to the time now when I see very clearly that not just Thousand Oaks, but every city in the state and the entire state has some terrible balancing problems to deal with and wrestle with. And those problems are problems that focus on balancing the need to provide housing, particularly for young people, but to provide housing and at the same time to preserve an environment that is healthy enough that we can live in it.
What are your hopes for the future of the city of Thousand Oaks?
Well, my hope would be that we would continue along the lines that we have developed, and that we would be able to provide a wholesome and worthwhile community for people to live in. I was persuaded early on by a writer, an architectural writer and municipal development writer named Lewis Mumford. And Lewis Mumford had made the statement in one of his books that the real measure of a community is the sort of men and women it produces, and the order and the sanity and the beauty of their community. And I was very persuaded by that. I was persuaded by that view. And I think if I look to the future of Thousand Oaks, I think I would use that test.
What is the biggest challenge, based on what you just said, what is the biggest challenge facing our community?
I think balancing this issue of providing housing that's necessary, particularly low-cost housing, but providing housing for the community and at the same time and filling the needs just of the children we generate, for providing the housing needs for those particular groups of our community, and at the same time balancing this very harsh environmental standard that's being imposed on us, not by politically, but being imposed on us just by the facts of the events themselves.
Mm-hmm. What is your greatest personal achievement?
Oh, I don't know that I
or professional.
Well, I don't know that I want to take a credit for a thing. There obviously were a number of legislative things that occurred during the time that I was city attorney, but I don't know that the adoption of the general plan certainly was a significant legislative event. I don't know that I would take personal credit for that. I didn't figure that was the role of the attorney. I felt the role of the attorney was to make things happen for his city council and not to be a policy person himself. And I tried to avoid taking a position or a side on policy. Obviously, I have a position on policy today, and I've just expressed it in my concern about this balance of the need to provide housing for certain groups like our young people and people with limited incomes, and at the same time protect the environment and to recognize that we've run out of resources in a couple of places.
Do you have a personal motto?
Yes, I think so. I think probably my personal motto would be to, at least while I was an attorney, was to do the very best I could for my clients, and which was at that time was the city of Thousand Oaks. And I think that that personal belief, I've retired, but I haven't retired. I'm an emeritus attorney with the Ventura County Bar Association. I've done some work recently with the Ventura County Superior Court on some special programs that they have, including a teen court, which is an interesting kind of service the Ventura County Superior Court is providing. But and I even acted as a pro temp judge in one case. But and I still work with various nonprofit groups like the Caneo Players. I'm still counsel for the Caneo Players. But generally, I think that there are a number of things that I've done that I enjoy, and I've tried to keep active. I've retired, but I haven't retired.
How would you like to be remembered?
As an attorney that helped the city council make things happen.
Good.
That they wanted, because I think that was my duty and my obligation.
Are there any questions that I didn't ask?
Oh, not really. The city has developed in a very good way, I think. I enjoy living here. I enjoy being a citizen of the community. I spend part of my time these days in Montana. I'm a fly fisherman, and I enjoy fly fishing. I go up there quite a bit, but I enjoy this city, and I like this city, and I think that it's many good things have happened here.
Well, good.
Due in large part to people that I think were truly dedicated to the city.
Well, and your dedication, I'm sure, played a big part in our history too.
Well, I enjoyed the people I worked for and worked with. I thought the city councils were excellent. I enjoyed working with people like Glenn Kentnall, who I thought was a very innovative, very effective city manager, one of the best I ever worked with, and I had worked with good ones and bad ones before I came here. And I enjoyed the city and its people. I think that, and the result is good. I think you can go out there and look, and I think you can say this city evolved in a very good way. And we didn't do things in our period of service and our stewardship, or we didn't do things, there weren't things done later that inhibited the ability of the subsequent people that are now leading the city to do the things that they think are right.
Good. Well, I've enjoyed having you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for being a guest, Mr. Clayton.
Thank you.